Hey everybody, Tim Higgins. So we're going to talk about this product called Runscope. Runscope is a great product for testing your API. So we're going to look at that today, how simple it is. Now, first thing we're going to do is this is the landing page. When you go to runscope.com, it shows you your test. And we're going to get into this later maybe, but right now we just want to kind of look through it. The idea is it gives you your success rate, your average response time. So it gives you great information. Any failed test, any passed test. I only have a few here that actually passed. So, but if I had some failed ones, I can click on them. I can run the tests if I want. And we'll talk about that because we get into environments later. Down here, though, I can create a test, or I can go up here and create a test up here. I can also import a test, which is right here as well. When you think about importing tests, think about Swagger. Maybe you have a Postman collection that you want to upload. So you can import your test here, and you can also export your test to JSON if you want to integrate that way. We also have a collection of integration tools that allows you to connect with things like Slack and Jenkins and New Relic. So let's look at this one API. I'm clicking on my other screen over here. This API is called, give me 1 second to get the information. This is just a current price API. So let's go ahead and click on this, create test. And I probably should edit the name. So we'll do that in a few seconds. But more importantly, what I care about right now is we just want to grab this in here, put that there. And I'll show you how to rename it later. There is an edit function, but we'll come to that in a second. When you look at this screen, this is what we call a step. Now I can have many steps, and we're going to do that as we go through this. The other thing I can do is look at assertions. So I'm going to go ahead and save this one. So now I've saved my API. We're going to test it just for kicks and giggles. Notice it puts it in the queue over here, and it's running it for me. And it just passed, so that tells me it works. Now I can change my endpoint if I want, post, get, the basics. I can also add authentication if I need to, if there's any headers or query strings that makes this URL work for me. Most importantly is I need assertions. Well, I definitely want to make sure it passes. And then one of the coolest features about Runscope, and I know cool is not a professional term, but it really is that now I can start testing on assertions. So if you know anything about testing, your assertions basically are true or false. Does it equal this? Does it not equal that? That kind of information. So in here, I can look on assertions from headers, JSON body, which we're going to get to, response size. What if I need my response size to come back at a certain level? Response time, same thing. What if I don't want this to run over so many milliseconds? My status code, which you're looking at here, which we want to make sure equals a 200, right? I can say make sure it doesn't equal a 404, right? But the problem is if it equals a 500, which is a security issue, then it's still going to fail. No, my test won't fail, but the API will fail. Now, I can look in a text body for returning back text and not JSON. And also, if I'm using SOAP maybe and I'm returning the XML body, then we can look at that. But let's look in JSON body. Now, I know that there is, inside this API, there is a function called, give me 1 second, is CharacterName. So we're going to say our character name. Now notice this equals, be careful, that's a numeric that will fail. So we're going to go to equals string. And I know there's a Bitcoin. So we're going to use it. So now from here, I'm going to just save and run again. And I'll click on this. Notice now it passed, okay? So it did pass as a 200. It also found the Bitcoin data type. So if I click on this, I can see the information. Here's the return body, okay? And if we actually put this to something cleaner, there's another way to view it. Well, this one didn't come through, but sometimes you click on this and you can get a better view of it. But in here, there's a Bitcoin. I see Bitcoin there, but it's okay. We don't need to find it. Take my word for it because it passed. But as you can see, I can get my header information. Remember I said we could test to see if the header content was JSON application. And I can also get my connection information. So my region here was California. We're going to look at changing that. Here's an IP address that was ran, a DNS lookup, and here's just some statistics that you can look at it. More importantly, it was a 200. My return size of this payload was 677 bytes, and it took 9 milliseconds. Okay, so that's great. So let's go change some of this. Now, I can add another step, but before you do that, let's look at some of this down here. I can, maybe if I want to add a request step, which we just did, that's a request. Or maybe I want to pause my testing for 5 seconds before it kicks off this other one, okay? So if I click on this little pencil looking plus thing, I can move that up there. And let's go ahead and just add a real test here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another step. Give it a second. Open this one up. And our next URL is going to be rates, exchange rates. Now, again, we don't have authentication. We don't have any headers. So all this information right here is pretty straightforward. So let's just go ahead and save. I don't want to run this one yet. Well, you know, that's okay. We can go ahead and run this one. And we'll say in our assertions here, we just want to make sure this one returns. So let's go ahead and run. Now we should hit our pause for 5 seconds. Let's go ahead and click on this view process. Notice it's paused. I guess I could try to count to 5. Oh, there we go. And now we're going to hit this one and it passed. Perfect. So now let's go back and edit this one more time. And for fun, what we're going to do is we're going to try something. We're going to put a condition in here. Okay. So we're going to say condition. If, here what I can say is if a variable equals a certain state. So we're going to take this one out, but I wanted to show you what this one was. I can say if this is not empty and so forth, so forth. And again, this is more useful when you're using variables, but we're not going to do that because that may take a little bit longer. So what we're going to do though is we're going to duplicate this one. We're going to just say duplicate. And here, let's take our last one, which is here. And let me go and edit this one. Now this one's going to be kind of tricky because I could do it this way. Oops. And that would say equals Scott, or I can also put this down here in our query. Notice our query string already picked it up for us. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that one. Let's make sure our assertions are there. For this one, do we want, let's just make sure, let's put a couple assertions in this one. So let's add a few more. So the first one I want to say is JSON body equals to name equals Scott, because I know that's there. Sorry, looking at this one, name equals Scott. Okay, and we want to make sure our response time is going to be, well, let's not do that. Let's just say our size is greater than, let's say 50, okay? Let's see if that works. That may throw us off because I have to see what that one is, okay? And then another one, I'm gonna go ahead and just say, let's do another JSON body. And then here, I know there's a gender, so let's just say equals gender and equals male. And if you want to know what I'm looking at, I'm actually looking at another tool called API Strong just to verify what this information is, just because I'm kind of cheating, right? I don't have it memorized. So just so you know what's going on the other screen. Let's go ahead and save this and let's just run it. Now, if we click over here, we've got a workflow of tests that we're running, okay? So the first one is, this one's good, okay? No failures. Notice it's still working. Our test pause for 5 seconds. Then after that, it's going to hit these other two, and they both passed. That's great. So let's see if we can do a little bit more stuff. Notice this says US California test. So what if I want to change some of that? If I go into my test and settings, to me, these test and settings are kind of more of a global type parameters, okay? So I can choose my environment. So let's go ahead. I don't really have any, but if I created one, I could choose one there. Oops, let's go ahead. Because like I may want test environment, I may want, QA environment and that type of stuff. And then I can change that settings along the way. I can set authentication at a global setting. Now global to this test case, right? So, and again, here's your environments, I'm sorry. So if I want to go create a new one, I can just click on this and say create a new environment. We'll give it its name and notice it changed my settings here. So we'll call this dev testing, okay? Now again, all I did is I'm changing my environment. So if I have one for QA, then I would just use QA. Notice my default here is here. But in QA, we have these authentication pieces. I have these headers that I'm looking for. If I need to do locations, now this to me is important because I can do a few of these. Let's do Ireland, let's do Japan, and maybe South Carolina. Okay, and then also I wanted it to email me, now this is my email address, when something fails. Now I don't care if it runs. Let's see, I want to know, test, okay, that's fine. So that's on-premise, but that's okay. You know, let's do it this one. If it fails because of API issues. So now we've got a pretty good test set up. So let's just run it and see what happens. Okay, again, notice this time it kicked off of a queue for each one of our locations. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So notice now it's running those. So now what we really got is a really good handle on our test that we're testing against, okay, our APIs that we're testing against. Not only can we create assertions, we create a pseudo workflow by adding these steps together. We'll look at one that's already passed, right? So here's a pseudo workflow, and I say pseudo because you build it out, right? It's a workflow of your APIs that run. We can also use variables to pass in between them if you wanted to. Most importantly, and notice all these passed, I expected that, but most importantly, I can add this to a schedule. So now I can say, let's schedule my dev test to run every 30 minutes. Now I'm going to go back and delete this, so to me it's not important, but maybe I want it to run once a day. Okay, so then we save. And just like that, we have just scheduled it to run. Again, if I look at results, I can see my result sets here. This is kind of a way of looking at reporting. So if I go in here and look, but more importantly, we'll look at that in a few minutes on the dashboard. But what I want to show you is just a quick overview. Now here's something kind of cool. If I want to see just my results for my dev test, now I can say, let's view all locations, or I can choose a location. I think we choose Japan, right? So now I can drill into ones that were just for that. Now I can actually run this test again. And notice it's only running the one because it's running for dev environment and it's running for Japan. So this allows me to cascade down to my test based off of that. I can say run all environments, and that's going to run everything, okay, within that, pretty much within these environment settings. So with seeing that, as you can see, there's a lot of things you can do with Runscope. Runscope has a very, let's go back to the beginning. Runscope has a very great way for you to run test cases against your APIs. Now keep in mind here I have longer, and again I should rename this one, but I don't really care. I'm gonna go back and delete it. But notice here I'm beginning to see how I have 100% success rate. This is my response time based off of these. And with that, if I need to create some use cases based off testing some APIs, I can build those out in a pseudo workflow that then I can run, and I can schedule to run whenever I wanted to. And not only that, but I can control the assertions that goes through. Again, just to kind of put a little more detail on that, when I looked at this, I was getting the APIs here. When I was going here, I can look at anything in this JSON, right? Because that's my assertion. And then we called this API, which was next. We didn't do anything with it. I think we just kind of looked at it and brought back a 200. And then the next one was this one. So we did the name was Scott. We know he's a male. And then we also looked to make sure our payload was was larger than 50. Okay. And then that gave us back our good test results. Now, the one thing I wanted to show you is when I click on this one's called Bean Login. This is one that we've done before. And if you notice here, there's a post. So I wanted to show you this one because we're actually posting. And we're also passing in headers because it's a post method. And here's the body of parameters that we're passing to it, okay? So that's pretty much what that one's doing. Now, if I look at the assertions, I'm looking for any errors. It should be null. My status should equals true. And then, of course, my status code should be 200. Sorry, I was thinking about the payload here. And then if I go down and look, there's two variables. So I'm passing in the login and password that was created. Okay. If I need to add in the variable, I just click on this and add it. Okay. Let's go ahead and close that. And then we also have our prescripts and postscripts. We're doing nothing with that. But then after that one is calling this one. And notice here's our variables that we were using. So here the variables have these quarterly kind of brackets. I'm not sure what they call, but in code we use those a lot. But notice that means that now it is passing it's using these variables to access this right here. So I can see how this works. This is going and getting this information, and it's bringing back the variable information. It's looking in the JSON body. It's getting the data API key. It's getting the data session token, and it's saving to these variables. And now I can use these variables to pass in as my login for here. So notice this authentication header. My login is this. And if you could see this, this would be this. But because it's a password, it has it blanked out. So hopefully this makes sense. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us. But in all essence, you have this really powerful tool called let me get out of this, called Runscope. Just go runscope.com. And then you can start testing your APIs with true assertions. So I hope this was helpful. And again, please reach out to us if you have any questions. Thank you.